It was a typical Tuesday morning in October 2001 in suburban Cleveland, Ohio. The autumn leaves painted the quiet neighborhood of Lakewood in shades of gold and crimson, and the crisp air carried the scent of burning wood from nearby chimneys. Sarah Martinez hurried through her morning routine, preparing her 1-year-old daughter Emma for another day at Sunshine Daycare Center on Detroit Avenue. Emma was a beautiful child with curly brown hair and bright hazel eyes, but what made her truly distinctive was the port wine-stained birthmark that covered the area from beneath her left eye to her temple. The reddish-purple mark was shaped almost like a crescent moon, and while some people stared, Sarah had always told Emma she was special because of it. "Mama loves you, sweetheart," Sarah whispered as she buckled Emma into her car seat. At 26, Sarah was a single mother working 2 jobs to make ends meet. She cleaned offices at night and worked as a cashier at the local grocery store during the day. Life was exhausting, but Emma made every struggle worthwhile. The drive to Sunshine Daycare took only 10 minutes through the familiar streets lined with maple trees. Sarah had chosen this daycare because Mrs. Patterson, the elderly owner, had been caring for children in the neighborhood for over 30 years. The small facility housed only 15 children, creating an intimate, family-like atmosphere that gave Sarah peace of mind. "Good morning, Mrs. Patterson," Sarah called out as she entered the daycare, Emma clinging to her shoulder. "Morning, dear. How's our little angel today?" Mrs. Patterson reached for Emma, who immediately went to her with a giggle. The older woman had grown particularly fond of Emma over the past 6 months. Sarah kissed Emma's forehead, careful not to disturb the small ponytail she'd managed to create with Emma's wispy hair. "I'll be back at 5:30, sweetheart. Be good for Mrs. Patterson." As Sarah drove away, she couldn't shake an unusual feeling of unease. She attributed it to the stress of her demanding schedule and the approaching winter months, when heating, bills would strain her already tight budget even further. At Sunshine Daycare, Emma played happily with the other toddlers, stacking colorful blocks and chasing bubbles that Mrs. Patterson blew across the playroom. The morning passed peacefully until around 11 o'clock, when an unfamiliar woman appeared at the door. The woman was in her early 40s, well-dressed in a navy business suit, with shoulder-length blonde hair and kind blue eyes. She introduced herself as Rebecca Thompson from the local health department, explaining that she needed to conduct a routine inspection of the facility. Mrs. Patterson, who had never had an unscheduled inspection in her 30 years of operation, felt confused but didn't want to cause problems with the authorities. She allowed the woman inside, showing her around the clean, well-organized space. "What a beautiful child," Rebecca commented, kneeling beside Emma, who was playing with a toy truck near the window. "That birthmark is quite unique. She's absolutely precious." Mrs. Patterson beamed with pride. "That's Emma Martinez. She's one of our sweetest little ones. Her mother works so hard to provide for her." During the supposed inspection, Rebecca asked detailed questions about the children's schedules, pickup times, and emergency procedures. She seemed particularly interested in Emma, asking about her mother's work schedule and whether anyone else ever picked her up. At 12:15, while Mrs. Patterson was in the kitchen preparing lunch for the children, chaos erupted. Emma had been playing near the back door that led to the small playground when Rebecca quickly scooped her up and slipped outside. By the time Mrs. Patterson realized what had happened, both the woman and Emma had vanished without a trace. Chishtu. Elderly caregivers' screams brought neighbors running, and within minutes, the police arrived at the scene. Detective Robert Hayes, a 15-year veteran of the Cleveland Police Department, took charge of the investigation immediately. When Sarah received the phone call at work, her world collapsed. She dropped the phone and ran from the grocery store, her manager's concerned shouts echoing behind her. The drive back to the daycare felt like an eternity, her hands shaking so violently she could barely grip the steering wheel. The scene that greeted her was overwhelming. Police cars lined Detroit Avenue, their red and blue lights flashing against the gray October sky. Crime scene tape surrounded the small building where she had left her precious daughter just hours earlier. "Mrs. Martinez," Detective Hayes approached, her with gentle but professional concern. "I'm Detective Hayes. I need to ask you some questions about Emma." Sarah's legs gave out, and she collapsed onto the daycare's front steps, sobbing uncontrollably. The other parents had already been contacted and were arriving to collect their children, their faces filled with fear and relief that it wasn't their child who had been taken. "Please find her," Sarah whispered through her tears. "She's everything I have. Please bring my baby home." Detective Hayes assured her that every resource would be dedicated to finding Emma, but as the hours passed and darkness fell over Cleveland, the harsh reality began to set in. Emma Martinez had vanished, and the woman who had taken her seemed to have planned the abduction carefully. The search for Emma Martinez became one of Cleveland's most extensive missing child investigations of the early 2000s. Within hours of the abduction, an Amber Alert was issued across Ohio, Indiana, and Pennsylvania. Emma's distinctive birthmark became the key identifying feature highlighted in every news report and missing child poster. Detective Hayes worked tirelessly, following every lead and interviewing dozens of witnesses. The woman who had posed as a health department inspector had provided false identification, and the license plate number Mrs. Patterson remembered led to a car that had been reported stolen 3 days earlier in Toledo. She planned this carefully. Detective Hayes explained to Sarah during one of their many meetings at the police station. The fake credentials, the stolen vehicle, the timing. This wasn't random. Someone specifically targeted Emma. Sarah struggled to understand why anyone would want to hurt her family. She had no enemies, no bitter custody disputes, no connections to criminal activity. She was simply a young mother trying to build a better life for her daughter. The media attention was overwhelming. Local news stations ran Emma's story every night for weeks, and her photo appeared on milk cartons and billboards throughout the Midwest. Sarah appeared on several national television programs, including America's Most Wanted, desperately pleading for her daughter's safe return. "Emma has a very distinctive birthmark," Sarah told the television cameras, her voice breaking with emotion. "It's a reddish mark that covers the area under her left eye and extends to her temple. If you see a little girl with this mark, please call the police immediately." Months passed without any credible sightings or leads. The investigation, while never officially closed, gradually received fewer resources as newer cases demanded attention. Sarah refused to give up hope, spending every spare moment distributing flyers and maintaining a website dedicated to finding Emma. The years that followed were the darkest of Sarah's life. She fell into a deep depression, unable to work consistently or maintain relationships. Her small apartment in Lakewood became a shrine to Emma, with photos covering every wall and Emma's room remaining exactly as she had left it on that terrible October day. Sarah's mother, Maria, moved from Phoenix to Cleveland to help her daughter through the grief. "Mija, you have to keep living," she would plead. "Emma would want you to be strong." Slowly, with therapy and her mother's support, Sarah began to rebuild her life. She returned to school, earning a degree in social work with a specialization in helping families of missing children. By 2010, she was working for the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children, channeling her pain into helping other families navigate the nightmare she knew too well. Detective Hayes, now nearing retirement, would call Sarah every year, on Emma's birthday and the anniversary of her disappearance. "I haven't forgotten her," he would always say. "I think about Emma every day." Sarah had moved to a small house in Westlake, about 20 minutes from where Emma had been taken. She couldn't bring herself to leave the Cleveland area entirely, clinging to the hope that somehow, someday, Emma might return to the place where she had been lost. The physical description she provided to age progression artists evolved over the years. Emma would have brown hair, probably long and curly like Sarah's. She would be tall, as both Sarah and Emma's father had been, and most importantly, she would still have that distinctive crescent-shaped birthmark beneath her left eye. By 2020, Emma would have been 21 years old. Sarah had imagined this milestone countless times, wondering if her daughter was in college, if she was happy, if she even remembered having a mother who loved her more than life itself. The case had gone cold years earlier, but Sarah never stopped searching. She monitored social media, attended conferences for missing children, and maintained contact with other families who had experienced similar tragedies. The hope that sustained her was simple but powerful. Somewhere out there, Emma was alive, and perhaps she was looking for her mother too. Sarah's work with other families had taught her that healing was possible even without resolution. She had learned to live with the uncertainty, to find purpose in her pain, and to believe that love could transcend even the most devastating loss. But she never stopped watching, never stopped hoping, never stopped believing that someday she would see her daughter's face again. October 15, 2024, started like any other Tuesday for Sarah Martinez. At 49, she had built a peaceful life in her Westlake home, though Emma's absence remained a constant ache in her heart. Her living room walls were still decorated with age progression photos showing what Emma might look like at various ages, the most recent depicting a 24-year-old woman with her distinctive birthmark. After dinner, Sarah settled into her comfortable armchair with a cup of chamomile tea, preparing to unwind after a particularly challenging day at the Center for Missing Children. She had counseled 3 families that day, each beginning their own journey through the nightmare she knew too well. She flipped through channels absently, not really looking for anything specific, when a cooking show on the Food Network caught her attention. Today, on Fresh Start Kitchen, we're featuring inspiring stories of young entrepreneurs who've overcome adversity to build successful businesses. The show's host, a cheerful woman with short red hair, was interviewing a young chef in what appeared to be a bustling restaurant kitchen. I'm here with Emma Davis, the 24-year-old head chef and owner of Crescent Moon Cafe in Austin, Texas. Emma, tell us about your incredible journey from foster care to culinary success. Sarah's teacup slipped from her hands, crashing to the floor as she stared at the television screen in shock. The young woman being interviewed had shoulder-length brown curly hair, hazel eyes, and was exactly the height Sarah had always imagined Emma would be. But what made Sarah's heart stop completely was the distinctive reddish-purple birthmark that covered the area beneath the woman's left eye, extending to her temple in the exact crescent shape she had memorized 23 years ago. My birthmark used to make me self-conscious as a kid, Emma Davis was saying, touching the mark absently as she spoke. But I've learned to embrace it. It's part of what makes me unique, and actually, it's why I named my restaurant Crescent Moon Cafe. Sarah's legs gave out, and she sank to her knees on the living room floor, her entire body trembling. The voice, though deeper now, carried the same musical quality she remembered from Emma's baby babbling. The way this young woman tucked her hair behind her ear was identical to a gesture Sarah had seen Emma make countless times as a toddler. I don't remember much about my early childhood, Emma Davis continued, her hands moving gracefully as she prepared a dish. I was placed in foster care when I was very young, and I bounced around between families until I was adopted by the Davis family when I was 8. They gave me stability and love, and they encouraged my passion for cooking. Sarah crawled closer to the television, her hands pressed against the screen as tears streamed down her face. Every maternal instinct she possessed was screaming that this was her daughter. The birthmark was not just similar, it was identical down to the smallest detail. The facial structure, the expressions, even the way Emma held her shoulders all matched Sarah's deepest memories. The most challenging part of my journey has been not knowing where I came from, Emma continued, her voice carrying a wistful note. I have these fragments of memories from when I was very small. Images of a woman with dark hair who used to sing to me, and a room with yellow walls and a mobile with dancing elephants above a crib. Sarah gasped audibly. Emma's nursery had yellow walls, and Sarah had spent hours watching her daughter stare at the elephant mobile that played Brahms' Lullaby. With shaking hands, Sarah grabbed her phone and called Detective Hayes, now retired but still living in Cleveland. Despite the late hour, he answered on the second ring. Detective Hayes, it's Sarah Martinez. I found her. I found Emma. She's on television right now, and I know it's her. The birthmark is identical, and she just described memories from her nursery. There was a long pause before Detective Hayes responded, his voice cautious but concerned. "Sarah, you've had false alarms before. Are you sure about this?" "I've never been more sure of anything in my entire life," Sarah said, her voice gaining strength. "This isn't wishful thinking or desperation. This is my daughter. I know her face, I know her expressions, and that birthmark is exactly the same." Detective Hayes, despite his retirement, agreed to help Sarah contact the Austin Police Department and the FBI. The Food Network show had provided enough information to locate Emma Davis and her restaurant in Austin. As Sarah watched the remainder of the show, learning about Emma's success as a chef and her journey through the foster care system, her heart broke for all the years they had lost, while simultaneously soaring with hope that they might be reunited. Emma Davis had grown into a remarkable young woman, intelligent, talented, and resilient. She spoke passionately about using her restaurant to provide job training for other foster children aging out of the system, demonstrating the same compassionate heart Sarah had always hoped her daughter would develop. When the show ended, Sarah remained on her living room floor, staring at the blank screen and processing the overwhelming emotions coursing through her. After 23 years of searching, hoping, and grieving, she had found her daughter through the most unexpected means possible. 3 days after seeing the Food Network show, Sarah Martinez found herself on a plane to Austin, Texas, accompanied by Detective Hayes and FBI agent Patricia Gonzalez, who specialized in cold case child abductions. The flight felt both endless and impossibly short as Sarah's mind raced between hope and terror. The FBI had been able to confirm that Emma Davis's timeline matched Emma Martinez's disappearance perfectly. She had entered the Texas foster care system in November 2001 as an approximately 18-month-old child with no documentation or known relatives. The foster care records indicated she had been found wandering alone in a Houston suburb, confused and calling for Mama. "We need to handle this very carefully," Agent Gonzalez explained during the flight. "If this is indeed your daughter, she has no memory of being abducted. To her, the Davis family are her real parents, and her entire identity is built around being Emma Davis." Sarah nodded, understanding the delicate nature of the situation. She had agreed to initial DNA testing before any contact was made, though. Every maternal instinct told her the results would only confirm what her heart already knew. The Austin Police Department had discreetly approached Emma Davis at her restaurant, explaining that they needed her assistance with an old missing persons case. They requested a DNA sample and asked if she would be willing to speak with a woman from Cleveland who believed Emma might be her missing daughter. Emma had agreed, though she admitted to feeling skeptical. She had been through similar situations before, as her distinctive birthmark had occasionally prompted people to think she was their missing relative. The meeting was arranged at the Austin Police Department on a Thursday afternoon. Sarah arrived 2 hours early, pacing the corridors and fighting waves of nausea. Detective Hayes and Agent Gonzalez tried to prepare her for various outcomes, but Sarah could barely focus on their words. When Emma Davis walked into the conference room, Sarah's knees nearly buckled. In person, the resemblance was even more striking. Emma was exactly Sarah's height, with the same slender build and graceful movements. Her brown curly hair caught the light exactly the way Sarah's did, and her hands moved in gestures that were hauntingly familiar. "Hello," Emma said politely, extending her hand to Sarah. "I understand you believe we might be related." Sarah took Emma's hand, and the simple touch sent electricity through her entire body. This was her daughter's hand, grown larger but still soft and warm in the exact same way. "I've been looking for you for 23 years, Sarah whispered, her voice barely audible. Emma studied Sarah's face intently, a flicker of something passing through her eyes. "You do look familiar," she admitted slowly. "There's something about your voice that seems, I don't know, comforting, I guess." Over the next 2 hours, Sarah shared Emma's baby photos, medical records, and videos of Emma as a toddler. She described the elephant mobile, the yellow nursery walls, and the way baby Emma had loved to be sung to sleep with "You Are My Sunshine, I." "Remember that song?" Emma said suddenly, her hand moving unconsciously to her birthmark. "I've always known all the words, but I never knew why. And I have this vague memory of someone singing it while I was in a crib, but I always assumed it was from one of my early foster homes." The DNA results arrived the following morning, confirming what Sarah's heart had known from the moment she saw Emma on television. Emma Davis was indeed Emma Martinez, the daughter who had been stolen from her 23 years earlier. The reunion was complicated and emotional. Emma struggled to process the revelation that her entire identity had been built on a lie, while simultaneously grappling with the reality that she had a biological mother who had never stopped searching for her. "I don't remember being taken," Emma admitted during one of their long conversations, "but I do remember being scared and alone for a long time afterward. The Davis family saved me, and I love them deeply. They'll always be my real family." Sarah's heart ached, but she understood. "I don't want to replace them," she assured Emma. "I just want the chance to know the incredible woman my daughter has become." The investigation into Emma's abduction was reopened, though the woman who had taken her was never found. Through therapy and patient conversations, Emma began to recover fragments of memories from her early childhood. She remembered Sarah's voice, the smell of her perfume, and the feeling of being completely safe in her mother's arms. 6 months after their reunion, Emma invited Sarah to Austin for the opening of her second restaurant location. As Sarah watched, her daughter addressed the crowd of supporters. She was overwhelmed with pride for the resilient, compassionate woman Emma had become despite the trauma she had endured. "I want to thank everyone who supported me on this journey," Emma said, her hand resting on Sarah's shoulder. "And I want to especially thank my biological mother, Sarah, who never gave up hope and never stopped believing that love could overcome any obstacle." The relationship between Sarah and Emma developed slowly, built on respect for the life Emma had created and the love that had never died despite their separation. Emma began spending holidays in Cleveland, learning about her Mexican heritage from her grandmother Maria and discovering the community that had never forgotten her. Sarah had found her daughter, but more importantly, she had gained a friend, a relationship that honored both the mother she had always been and the woman Emma had chosen to become. The 23 years of separation had not diminished the bond between them. It had simply transformed it into something deeper and more precious. Emma still owned and operated her successful restaurants in Austin, still considered the Davis family her true parents, and still wore her birthmark as a badge of pride. But now she also carried the knowledge that she was deeply loved by a mother who had spent over 2 decades refusing to give up hope. The case of Emma Martinez had finally been solved, not through traditional detective work, but through the power of a mother's love and the miracle of a birthmark that had led them back to each other across time, distance, and heartbreak.